15 days to slow the spread. You know, Clay, I remember this, but I didn't remember it as well as I thought I did. First of all, we've talked so much about Fauci. There was Dr. Birx.
Oh, yeah.
Who was run off into obscurity because she did the whole everyone should mask and not see their family members for Thanksgiving. But, I mean, I'm going to go see my family members for Thanksgiving. And at that point, I think, because maybe she was around for the Trump administration, she hadn't attached herself enough like a barnacle to the Biden vessel. So she decided to get out of there. But I want to remind everybody, 2 years ago, I believe to the day today, here is what she said about 15 days to slow the spread.
We're asking that same sense of community to come together and stand up against this virus. And if everybody in America does what we ask for over the next 15 days, we will see a dramatic difference, and we won't have to worry about the ventilators, and we won't have to worry about the ICU beds, because we won't have our elderly and our people at the greatest risk having to be hospitalized.
Completely wrong. I mean, can we just, the initial promise here was just give us 15 days. It'll just be 15 days, and you'll see a dramatic improvement. The 15 days turned into, what, how many months before we got a real, I mean, effectively 2 years.
Yes.
But 15 days turned into 2 years, and there was no benefit, Clay.
No benefit
whatsoever.
No benefit at all, Buck. And do you remember how slow all of those days seemed back during March of 2020, during that 15 days to slow the spread? It felt like March of 2020 lasted like 10 years, and then April too. And then fortunately where I was, by mid to late April, we were basically back to normal. But I remember going to a restaurant, and I remember having a conversation. And by the way, this is still a conversation you could have, because there are more COVID cases now, even today, than there were in March of 2020 when we shut down, at least that we know about. And I remember going into a restaurant, and the restaurant owner there saying, I'm so glad to be opening back up. But he said, there's way more cases now when the state of Tennessee is opening back up than there were when we shut down. And that didn't get talked about enough, because remember when Fauci used to walk out all the time, Buck, and he would always make his hand and he would say, you know, what we're trying to do is avoid a peak and kind of spread the plateau out, and he'd always stand there.
Me? He was like one of these weathermen who stands in front of the green screens. It was, if you do what I say, you'll hit a plateau through mitigation. We don't want to see a surge, but we could see a drop-off if mitigation measures are something that we all collectively commit to with the droplets. I remember all this. He was wrong
on everything.
Single time. This guy was wrong all the time, and libs were obsessed with him.
Isn't it crazy? Because I just sent out a tweet about this, that Fauci's nowhere to be seen on this 2-year anniversary. This was the beginning of Dr. Fauci as the throw pillow. Is it, I think Gretchen Whitmer, right? Buck, the governor of Michigan, has like a Fauci throw pillow. There's all these people who are still enamored with Fauci. And what's wild is he's gone. Like, where is he? Wouldn't you think on a 2-year anniversary here that there would be some interview that he was doing or some retrospective that would be talked about? The Biden administration, I don't know if you buy into this as much as I do, Buck. I think the Biden administration is leaning so hard into the Ukraine story because it distracts from all the disasters going on with domestic policy. I'm not sure whether it's going to impact things in terms of Biden's overall popularity, but that story is a far better one to be telling than the COVID mess, than the murder rate skyrocketing, than inflation at probably double digits by the time we get an analysis in March. And so they're leaning into this, but Fauci has just vanished. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that there aren't retrospective stories being done today on the 2-year anniversary of 15 days to slow the spread.
I think more than anything else, he just has gone beyond his political usefulness expiration date.
Well, that's certainly true.
And so that's why, he's not even getting the invitations, I'm sure. This isn't, I think everyone needs to be clear on this. It's not that Fauci and those like him, but Fauci was always really in a class by himself, and he was a little megalomaniac. Never once showed contrition, never once said, guys, we got this wrong. We really need to take the politics out of this. This is about getting it right. It was always be scared, listen to me. I've got more things to say about how you can't live normally yet. That was every single time. He somehow managed, and this was always the tell, this was always the giveaway. He never said anything in 2 years. Not once did he really upset the MSNBC watching Brooklyn and Northwest D.C. crowd that loves all this stuff and thought that, oh my gosh, 2 masks and I take it so seriously, the whole thing. Never upset them. They were his constituency. He was really the high priest or really the pope of a religion that he created around COVID. And now he's not even getting the invitations from CNN. He's not even being asked, I can guarantee you, to appear to talk in these places because what are they going to say? The vaccine program worked so well to stop the spread. We hit all-time highs after a vaccine mandate ripped this country apart after Joe Biden ran around talking about a pandemic of the unvaccinated and how they were a threat to other people. Here's the reality. Their promise that if you got the shot, you'd be done was a lie. And in some ways, even worse than that, their demand that you get the shot or else you're a threat to other people was also a lie, because whether you got the shot or not, you were spreading it all over the place.
It's totally true. And you pointed this out. It is so incredible. Not once in 2 years did Fauci ever say this is too much. When they went and filled up all of the people who like to skateboard in California, when they filled up the skateboard parks with sand, didn't say it was too much. When they put crime scene tape around playgrounds for young kids, when they arrested a guy on a paddleboard out in the ocean, when they shut down every trail and park all over the state of California, when they wouldn't allow you to go outside, never did Fauci come out and say, hey, you know what, we got this wrong. And Marty McCary, who we talked to in the first hour, Buck, in his piece points out, how much time did Fauci spend telling people, hey, you need to like Lysol all your mail and Lysol everything that comes into your house, when he was continuing to spread the idea that COVID was something that was living on objects and would spread that way, as opposed to all the evidence supporting the fact that it was aerosol.
Clay, we were forced to obey the dictates of the psychologically destabilized masses because Anthony Fauci and those around him gave a veneer of scientific credibility to this when it was obvious that this was absurd. And beyond that, there has been a vindictiveness now that you're seeing. And it certainly is the case here in New York City. You know, New York, there's still, and you asked, we've talked about this, I don't even really know what the exact official,
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to come into the studio. That's what I was asking. Like if I'm in New York.
New York City still has an employer vaccine mandate in place. Like, no one's going out and getting the shot right now, obviously. No one really, I mean, very, very, very few people. No one really cares, except for the people that are like, I want my 8th shot.
Yeah,
I need another shot. Where's my next shot? People get all excited about this. Like, it's going to, you know, it doesn't make you Superman. You can't fly after you get COVID shot number 9. But there are people that act like that. But here we are in New York City, Clay. They're leaving in place. I mean, I think there are 2 things happening. One is that they want, if you were living in New York and you would manage to get this far, which you wouldn't because you wouldn't have been able to go buy groceries.
I would have lost my mind, yeah.
Yeah. But if you were living here and managed to go this far without complying with the vaccine mandate, they want to continue to punish those people at some level because the employer mandate is the one where they really have the most leverage. So they want to continue to agitate and punish people. But beyond that, this is why I was asking Dr. McCary about whether there's been a real change in sentiment from within the medical community. They're leaving in place the structure of ramping it up again.
Yeah.
They're leaving behind, okay, we'll leave the employer mandate in place as long as we can, and then it will come back in the fall. What do you mean? No big deal. Just like the measles, mumps, rubella shot or the flu shot, they're going to say. This is what they're going to be telling us, which is why, as we've said, it's not over.
No doubt. When we come back, by the way, we're going to talk to Senator Ron Johnson in the third hour about all of this and more. And tomorrow, I believe we're scheduled to speak with Rand Paul, who is going after Dr. Fauci and him being the highest paid. I don't think we talk enough about this. Dr. Fauci is the highest paid person in the entire federal government. I mean, think about how wild that is, Buck. I mean, he makes more money.
There are millions of federal employees.
Yes.
A couple million of them.
He is the single highest paid.